Clyde Kluckhonen, an American anthropologist and social theorist, once stated that every human is like all other humans, some other humans, and no other humans. Now, I know what you're thinking. How can we be like all humans, some humans, and no humans at the same time? I'm glad you asked that question. Well, one way we can be like all humans, we can have the desire of wanting to be equal within society, or wanting to be accepted by others, or simply comfortable in our own environments. And how can we be like some humans? We can share certain characteristics with one another. For example, we can have the same personality or the same idea on certain concepts. And lastly, how can we be like no humans at all? Of course, we are all humans. We all breathe the same air. We all walk the same ground. How are we not the same? Of course, we can all have these different similarities with one another, but deep down, we are all diverse within our own ways. With that being said, we have our own experiences that we face. We live our own lifestyles, and we have our own beliefs. Learning about intercultural communication can increase our communication skills and also influence us to understand cultural differences. First, I will discuss the basis of communication, what intercultural communication is, and why intercultural communication is important to us. Now, what is communication? Communication is the method we use to interact with one another. Communication can be written, oral, hand gestures, pictures, anything that can convey a message to one person and they receive it. The Speaker's Edition book, the Speaker's Primer, second edition book, does explain that communication originated from the Greeks and the Romans. Specifically, they talk about the two sophists, Gorgias and Pythagoras, who mainly influenced communication of what it is today. They emphasize that the delivery of a speech is one of the most important elements of a speech, and also that when creating an argument, it's important to understand both sides of the argument in order to take one stance or one position on a certain subject. With that being said, because I've explained to you what communication is, now we will explore intercultural communication. Intercultural communication is the exchanging of information between or among individuals of different cultures. Now, when people think of culture, most of them think of someone's background or their language, their foreign language that they speak. And of course, those two are two aspects of culture, but culture is way more than that. Culture can be the experiences one has. It can be the different thoughts that one has within them, or their beliefs, or the way that they live their lifestyles. Now, of course, intercultural communication is not an easy subject. It is hard because it's requiring you to step out of your comfort zone and communicate with people that are completely different from you. They communicate completely different from the way that you do. Now, I have experienced this. It has been challenging for me. I live in Northern Virginia, so if you live here, you know that this is a very diverse area. And at my job, there are people from all over the place, so many different countries that come in there. And it's hard for me to communicate with them because they don't speak English or they have broken English. So as I started taking these communication courses, I've learned not to just ignore them or try to avoid them because I'm not going to understand them and they're not going to understand me. But I've learned to use different methods of communication. So I show them, I point to the number on the price tag, I type in numbers on the calculator so that they can understand, or I write down certain things and I have them write down certain things, and then we go from there. So it's not an easy process, but you just have to learn to get around those barriers that are stopping you from communicating with one another. Now, why is communication important, you might think? The Association for Talent Development website does describe communication, does say that communication is important because it gives us the ability to communicate with people of many diversities. So we're not communicating with people that we're seeing every day, that we're talking to every day, but people outside of that. So we're being able to understand how they act, how they communicate, and how they perceive the world themselves. Also, it removes cultural barriers. So there's not a wall in between us because you are Korean and I am American. There's not a wall between us. We can still learn to communicate with one another. Just because we don't speak the same language doesn't mean that we can't communicate. So they're allowed to embrace their cultures once these barriers are removed. They can influence us and teach us, educate us on their languages or how they communicate within their country, how it's polite to rub on someone or give someone a hug or a handshake when you first meet them. We're exposed to all these different communication methods, and of course it increases our skills. With that being said, Adriana Medina Lopez, an assistant professor of intercultural communication at the University of Maryland, spoke at a seminar, and she explained different skills we can practice to increase our intercultural communication skills. She did point out one was body language, so making sure that when you do communicate with someone from a different culture, you have good body language, so you're not looking around, you're not looking at the clock or just trying to have having a negative expression on your face, because then they're going to feel intimidated and they're not going to be confident when communicating with you anymore. She does emphasize that we must have patience with one another, so if they're trying to explain something and it's getting kind of hard for us to understand, we just have to have patience. Make sure we keep eye contact with them to help them feel confident within themselves. To conclude, intercultural communication is a learning experience. Of course, it's something that we will continue to learn. It's not something that we can just wake up and do automatically. It's something that we have to learn. We have to try to learn our best about these different cultures and how they communicate, and in the end, just respect them and do our best to keep them confident and allow them to be comfortable within our zones. Thank you.